Well, our manifesto sets it out clearly: our lives, our jobs, our future. Our lives, because COVID-19 is a live threat. We are here in a stable position, but the problem is far from over. It's going to last quite a long time. It's quite a dangerous problem, and we must be vigilant, and we must have the government ready to respond, and we must have a population strongly cooperating with the government with the various measures so that we keep ourselves safe. Secondly, our jobs. Because COVID-19 has generated a very deep recession, our jobs are at risk. We've protected our jobs through drastic Herculean measures, 4 budgets, $100 billion. But the worst is yet to come. Up to now, unemployment has been kept quite low. Income impact on people, not so bad. Businesses, some losses, but not so bad. But it's going to get worse before it gets better. And we have to be able to protect the jobs and keep our economy intact so that we can recover again and people can see through this time. Thirdly, our future. One day, COVID-19 will pass, the recession will be over, we will move on, and we want to move on to our goal of a better Singapore, a transformed society, an economy, and a better life for all. And that means plans, that means resolution, that means resourcefulness and unity to navigate the uncertainty and to go through together. That requires leadership from the government and unity and support from the people, which underlies all three things: lives, jobs, future.
Well, I think the first issue has to be jobs, 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 but not just any job. The government has announced that they are looking at 100,000 new jobs and traineeship placements. I think a lot of Singaporeans have asked me, Mr. Singh, which of these jobs are going to really propel Singapore into another league? A number of jobs will be created, I'm sure. A second issue related to this is those jobs that are created, do we see a skills transfer to Singaporeans over time, especially for the high-end jobs? So certainly this is something that will keep on repeating itself as we move forward in the next few months. Apart from jobs, let's look at the decade going forward. This particular decade, we will see the doubling of our elderly population from 450,000 to 900,000 Singaporeans. It will change the complexion of Singapore society, and for our seniors, it is very important that the government of the day is on top of the issues that are affecting them. In the WP manifesto, we have talked about more flexible MediSave usage, reducing the expenditure, the cost of living expenditure for Singaporean seniors. And that'll be something we will have to press very hard in Parliament. And certainly things of a different nature, like for example, if people still want to work, how can we help them reduce their cost of living? So one proposal has been free public transport for Singaporeans above the age of 65 and for all Singaporeans with disabilities. And this really comes to try, it's really an attempt from the Workers' Party to make us a more compassionate society. And I think that's very critical. I believe very strongly in this, and this is going to be one of the points that we'll push quite hard in Parliament. I beg your pardon. Finally, of course, a big issue in this election will be how strong a mandate does the government need in Parliament? And our view is with 21 candidates, anything up to 1/3 of opposition in Parliament will still give the government a very strong mandate to run its policies. But what the people will have is a strong check in government, which, number one, will allow the government to continue to function, and number two, it will also ensure that the voices of the public are heard.
I see the main issue in this current election is COVID-19. How we manage COVID-19 would determine our future. For example, if we don't manage the COVID-19 properly, I want to believe that what we want, like all the investors to come in, the tourists, all these people to come in, will not be realized. Because they are watching how we manage COVID, and if let's say the numbers are high, I don't think all these attempts to want to get people to come here, and also along with it, the jobs, the investment will not be happening because there's no confidence in the way we are managing this COVID. And without confidence, there will be no trust. How are they going to trust that when they send those people over here to come and help in the companies, they won't come. So so it's, to me, the priority actually is COVID-19. So the others are all following how you manage COVID-19. And honestly, I feel that if we were to take our eye off this, on COVID-19, and concentrate on just jobs, I'm not so sure whether that will be good or not. I'm thinking of lives and livelihood, which is a very, very important aspect of our future. And how we are going to manage our lives, for example, how we are going to manage our economy, all this really depend on this global activity that could be generated as a result of a good control of this COVID-19. And at the moment, I see that our over-concentration on the other aspects may not be very proper. You have lost sight of the disease. You are only managing the symptoms.
I think the top issue right now, people are very concerned with the jobs, and rightly so, because of the pandemic that's just broken out and caused, given the economy, a big whack. And because of this, retrenchment has become a huge topic, and that's why we think it's important for us to be talking about and pushing to introduce a retrenchment benefit scheme. And something like that that we're proposed in this election is for retrenched workers to receive a payout of 75% of the last drawn salary, capped at medium wage, in the first 6 months, and 50% in the second 6 months, and 25% in the final 6 months. So something like that will just give retrenched workers something to work on, even as the bills pile up and the income stops. And related to that, of course, is job creation, right? Retrenched workers need to find re-employment. And one of the things that we've found really important is that to have some kind of a program for retrenched workers to come together. And we've proposed that if you can actually find similarly retrenched workers and able to come up with a viable business plan, then the government should allow them to withdraw these payouts in one lump sum so that they can go out and start a cooperative enterprise. And this will just get them back into the economy as productive members. The third issue that we've been very concerned about is related to this issue as well, and that is the ongoing influx of foreign PMETs. Singaporeans, either the unemployment has been going up in the last few years. Underemployment is also a huge problem over here. And you have these issues where we're not against foreign workers coming in. What we have a problem with is that when these foreign workers come in, they're most of the time employed because they're able to afford these lower wages that Singaporeans cannot survive on. And if that's the case, then you're talking about wages being suppressed. And that's continues to be a problem with our local workers, Singaporean workers, and I think something needs to be done about this before it really gets, the situation gets from bad to worse.
We have been doing this right from the beginning, because once we saw COVID-19's impact on the countries in the world, we knew that the economy would be badly hit. So we are looking after existing jobs to preserve them. We are looking after the people who are affected, losing incomes or jobs, and we are also making sure that we create new jobs for the future. For the people in jobs, our schemes have spent a lot of government money like on the job support scheme, to help employers pay for the wages of their workers and keep their workers employed rather than letting them go. And it has been effective so far. And we are also helping the companies, especially the SMEs, who are needing to manage their cash flow, needing to manage their financing, their interest costs, to keep their costs low and keep their companies going. Secondly, we have schemes which help the people whose incomes have been affected or who have lost their jobs. So you've got things like the COVID-19 support grant. We've got a temporary relief fund which help tide individuals over. And for the self-employed in the gig economy who are particularly badly hit, we have the SIRS, the Self-Employed Income Relief Scheme, which has helped tens of thousands or 100,000 people to tide over this. For the longer term, the more sustainable solution is training, getting new jobs, and therefore Skills Future and Skills Future programs, which have been ramped up substantially. Thirdly, we have to create job opportunities. And we're talking about 100,000 job and training opportunities in the public sector and the private sector. The public sector itself, 15,000 job opportunities, and that means opportunities for jobs and opportunities also for training leading on to jobs. And many of these are targeted at workers who are in their 40s and their 50s, and we also have schemes aimed at fresh graduates going into the workforce for the first time in a very difficult year. We have a National Jobs Council led by Senior Minister Tharman, and it is coordinating and driving efforts in the government and also working with the unions, the business associations, and the private sector. To create new jobs, the key is new investments, new projects, and therefore new opportunities to work. And EDB has been doing a remarkable job bringing in new investments, $13 billion of investment commitments in the first 3 months of this year. And it can do this because people have confidence in Singapore, in our politics, in our leaders, in the ministers, in the civil service, in the workforce, which is the best in the world. And we must keep it like that so that we maintain the confidence and we continue to bring in investments and create jobs and a better, secure future for our people.
This is a very important question that the Workers' Party has spent some time thinking about, and we had to adjust our manifesto in the last few months. So the first chapter opens with COVID-19 proposals, but I'll take a step back and look at it from a larger economic standpoint. So, for example, if we look at a much, on a broad level, one of the things that we've proposed is an Exim Bank, Export-Import Bank for Singapore. And the real purpose of this is to make Singapore goods and services more attractive for locals, foreigners, anyone. And this really is a case of trying to build up the economy and trying to ensure that our SMEs always have customers coming in. Another proposal that we have made, of course, is controlling industrial rents. And this is really a pain point for many SMEs because rents can really kill the business. And so it's one of the agenda items is really to have a look at this in a more dedicated way going forward. Then, of course, you look at company-specific enhancements that we have sought to consider. Number one, incentivizing Singaporean businesses that actually hire Singaporeans by way of tax relief, tax rebates. That's one important area that we've looked at. The other aspect also looks at the individual. For example, certain industries where we can further tighten employment pass criteria. I think we should do that so that more Singaporeans can take on jobs in those industries. Then, of course, at the individual level, we have proposed for Skills Future education loans for people who really want to change industries, but they need to be retrained in a much more significant way. These are some of the ways that we've put forward to secure jobs in the months to come. And I certainly hope that we have a greater debate on some of these issues in Parliament.
Yeah, this is the how we manage, as I said earlier, the COVID-19 will determine our jobs. Because I presume that We want to get people to come here and invest to get that the jobs that we want. But for me, I'm thinking that is more like a up approach. I want a ground approach. I would like to encourage that we should really relook at some of our rules and regulations pertaining to our businesses in Singapore. We have to go back to the drawing board and see whether our current rules and regulation is affecting the new environment. And if we keep on sticking to the old rules and old regulations, I wonder whether our businesses here can really manage or not. To me, I feel that is a very, very important area. Then, of course, I think we have to look at the people who are working at home now. How are they going to manage at home? Do we provide things for them, supporting? So I'm also thinking of maybe at the void decks, we have all this, they call this the home shared facilities, so that while working at home, if they need some support, they will be able to go down, maybe at the void deck. They can have facilities for them to help them to do all the work at home. I mean, things like this. So we must not think only getting jobs from outside. We must try to get all the jobs. It must come from ground up. Get those, in fact, we should support them. Some of the money that we have actually from our reserves, that we should look into all these areas, how to support our local industries. Because remember, as I said, what we expect, those jobs that are coming, that we want to create, are primarily will depend on the global activity. And with this global slowdown, with this breakdown in this globalization, I worry whether it really want to come or not. So unless we think out of the box and depend on all that sort, I'm not so sure whether we can get the jobs really we want or not. So we got to make sure that our local base is strong.
As I mentioned a little while ago, this whole program of allowing retrenched workers to make sure that they are able to band together and, try to come up with some kind of a business plan that will really stimulate pushing for an entrepreneurial class development in Singapore, which we are so sorely lacking in. Now, as far as jobs, livelihoods are concerned, what we need to do is to make sure that, we lower costs at this point. And by that, I mean putting more money into the pockets of Singaporeans. If you provide retrenchment benefits, right, for retrenched workers, you're really telling them that, hey, with this money, go out and they're going to have to spend and pay bills and buy groceries and so on and so forth. No retrenched worker is going to take the money and fly out to Paris for a holiday, right? So what we're going to do is helping businesses, local businesses to thrive, stimulate the economy. The same thing for the program for the retirement income, for the elderly, to give 80% of the lower income groups of retirees $500 monthly income. This money can then be used by these retirees in the local economy, and it really will help to stimulate the economy. And when businesses begin to be able to survive and thrive, hopefully sometime in the future, they're going to be able to then sustain jobs and not go bankrupt and then have to retrench even more workers, and then you get the spiral downwards. So we're very concerned, and these are two of our plans to make sure that we continue to put money into the pocket of Singaporeans so that we can sustain jobs and even create more of them.
Crisis has put many societies under great stress. If you look at the West, often COVID-19 hurts the poor and the minorities disproportionately, and it's deepened fault lines in these societies. And we've been very mindful of this. So right from the beginning of the crisis, we have systematically paid attention to the more vulnerable groups to look after them. So we have the care and support package for households. We have the workfare special payouts for low-income workers. We are also, even during the circuit breaker period, keeping disadvantaged students from disadvantaged homes in school and having the schools open for them so that they will not miss out on learning opportunities because they can't do it at home. But even long before the crisis, we have already strived to ensure equal opportunities in every generation with affordable housing, education, good health care, with strengthened social safety nets. We've had the workfare, we've had the progressive payments, progressive wage system for the low income. We've got the Pioneer Generation Package, the Merdeka Generation Package. We've got the silver support for older workers who are not so well off and don't have so much CPF. So after COVID-19, and even without that, but faster now, we will have to do more. For example, with healthcare, we definitely have to build up to provide more services, which means more resources, and we are committing these resources. And all these programs have to be paid for. And we are quite upfront with the people that we will make the programs work, we will deliver the results for you, but it does mean that we have to pay for them, and the GST at some stage has to go up sometime in this term of government, or rather in the next term of government, after we have overcome the crisis. But we've also given assurance to the public that low and middle income families will be amply looked after, and we have a $6 billion package of offsets when we implement the GST. In other countries where they have not managed COVID well, there are many political implications. You may have a change of government, you may even have loss of confidence in the whole political system. But our experience with crisis has been that if we manage it well, we emerge strengthened. The Pioneer Generation with independence, the Merdeka Generation taking us from third world to first. So they went through the crisis, were overwhelming, but they were not overwhelmed. They emerged toughened. And this time, for this generation, this is the crisis of our generation, and we must emerge toughened, stronger, and tightly bonded with the government. And that will see us through, Singapore through, for another generation and more.
Well, I think what is really coming to fore with COVID-19 is certain blind spots in government thinking. And one of our key agenda items is to work towards a new brand of politics where information is the key currency, which allows Singaporeans to participate and to get involved in policy making, and also to consider how we can envisage a better Singapore going forward. I think that's very important. The government is still, the PAP will still form government, but that's why it's so important to bring more opposition voices into Parliament so that we can frame the conversation with the people at the centre of the government's agenda.
I would see the political changes is like an awakening now. An awakening because suddenly Singaporeans are all thrust into this stay-at-home environment that give them more time to think and to assess issues and to look at what is actually happening. So I think they will want, I believe, to have a different way of looking at things, and even in the political arena. And I would like to believe that they will now take a closer look at whether this one-party system that we have here will be able to look at this global situation that we create. And I think it is better that we all work as a family, come together. Sometimes political differences we may have, but at the end of the day, I have to think of the people first. And if the people, I find that needs help, whatever, and even if the government has come up with something that's very good for them, there's no reason why we will not support it also. So actually look at it as something, something will affect everybody. No longer you have the monopoly of able to manage this properly. It is a joint effort. It's for the people. So I would like to work along those lines.
You know, the one thing that we've said all along is that the government, the PAP, must not put itself before the people. I remind Singaporeans that even as early as March, before the situation got really bad, the PAP already started thinking of having this election. And from that, the ministers started going out campaigning. I remember seeing Ms. Josephine Teo out, trying to have this big event with women candidates. Mr. Teo Chee Hian was, I beg your pardon, was Mr. Ng Eng Hen, Mr. Shanmugam, Mr. Goh Chok Tong. They were all out on walkabouts. But, and they took the eye off the ball. In a situation like this, in a crisis that was unprecedented, in their words, you could not afford to have ministers take their eye off the ball and just start pivoting towards an election. No, that has to change. All this came about because somehow the PAP always sees itself as above the law, above the people, and that just doesn't quite inspire the confidence that the government is for the people and puts the people first. The other problem that we've seen is that this pandemic has exposed, laid bare the problems of our society as far as the income divide is concerned, right? During the lockdown where students had to do home-based learning, it was reported that 3,000 students had to borrow, and some of these electronic devices had to be loaned out to them. Why in a day and age where we are the poster country for crazy rich Asians, where we have all by in last count, one of the richest countries in the world in terms of number of billionaires and millionaires per capita in this country, that we still have students who cannot afford these computer devices. And then you have the elderly too, where many of them are continue to have to work and work for wages that are just below poverty levels. So it's a shame that we have to continue to have something like this going on. And as I said, post-COVID Singapore, we have to address these social issues as well.
Well, we must understand what our national interests are. Small country, we depend on international rule of law. We depend on an open, rules-based multilateral system with international bodies to help make it work, like the UN, like the WTO, like the World Bank, like the IMF. And we also depend on being friends to all countries, wherever we can. It won't be so easy because you can see that US-China relations are deteriorating. We don't want to be forced to take sides, but it is going to become harder to be friends of both the way things are going. There will be time when we have national interests at stake, important ones. And then we will have to stand firm, even if this causes some impact on our relations with other countries. But in that case, especially, I think it's very important for us to be seen to be acting on principles, acting on our own behalf, and not acting as a proxy for anybody else. So an independent foreign policy standing up for Singapore. We will also make common cause with like-minded partners to make our voices heard. Partners in ASEAN, other small countries around the world, particularly those who have open outlooks on trade and on multilateralism. So at the UN, we have groups like the Global Governance Group, the Forum of Small States. We are taken quite seriously internationally. Because why? Firstly, Singapore is a success story. There's something to talk about. Otherwise, you may have the most eloquent speeches in the UN, nobody will pay attention to you. Secondly, because we have capable ministers and diplomats, so we are able to engage on an equal level with their counterparts from much bigger and more powerful countries. And when there's an international meeting, we're able to make a contribution. We help to foster a consensus. We help to broker a deal. And therefore, people find us useful, whether it's at the WTO meetings, whether it's at the climate change meetings, whether it's at RCEP. and we are welcome to participate and listen to. Thirdly, because Singaporeans are united and the government has strong support when the ministers speak, they speak with confidence and with weight. And therefore, people have to listen, and we don't open ourselves up to being manipulated or being split. And we must keep these strengths in order to make ourselves relevant and heard and secure our position in the world. Finally, of course, apart from diplomacy, there's the SAF. In the last resort, be prepared to defend ourselves, make sure that our security is maintained, nobody takes advantage of us.
Well, I think the best way to do that is to take a look inside first, in Singapore. And I think we really need to strengthen the social safety nets for people who fall between the cracks, or the low income, and those who need help and assistance. Singapore will be an open nation. Let's face some realities here. We have to be friendly to trade, open trade. But it is precisely because of that reason that we need to double down on what our people face in Singapore. Those who can enter the slipstream of globalization, it's smooth. But there are some who will suffer turbulence, and what we need to do is to make sure that those who are in turbulence are lifted up. And that's the point about stronger social safety nets, and that also defines a lot of the proposals that the Workers' Party have made in our manifesto.
I think for Singapore to have a place in the world, we've got to keep it very open. In other words, we welcome all people who can make contribution to Singapore. I have many a times been accused of against foreign talent, but that is not true. Anyone who wants to come and come to Singapore and help us to grow are always welcome. And my line has always been that. But of course, we also have to be very careful, because we have to think of our Singaporeans first, especially with regards to jobs. Whether job that is, the Singaporeans can take on those jobs, I think we have to give them priority first. But the foreigners are always welcome. And if they are really very, they come here and bring very good expertise, I would also like them to share with Singaporeans. Sharing in the sense that maybe after about 5 years or so here, they should be able to impart their knowledge to our locals and train our locals. I think in that way, we will have a better understanding of each other. You know, that you come here because you feel this place is good for you to do business, you're welcome. But there's always a give and take. Look, our people here also need your expertise. So let's work together. And if those people who are really very good and want to take up citizenship or are permanent residents, I think we should also welcome them. If really want to make Singapore their home, I don't want to be in the way of saying, oh, because you're a foreigner, we don't want you. No. We want people, anyone who can make substantial contribution to this country, they're always welcome.
Well, the one thing that we really need to do is not continue in this fashion where all we're concerned about is just GDP growth at all costs. That's not going to cut it going forward. What we need to do is to open up society and be a more inclusive society. And I mean a genuinely more inclusive society, not just in word, not just in rhetoric. And by that I mean to bring in people from all walks of life and to get our economy to a certain to a stage whereby it depends on the people, the SMEs to drive it, not on the GLCs. And so if this is going to be the path that we're going to take forward, then we can truly then begin to claim that we have come of age and find our place in the international community. If we're going to continue in this fashion, whereby the government is just going to get richer and richer, and whereby we have an underclass, a permanent underclass, then all we can say is that we've become a rich nation, but never a great one. never a caring one. And it is these qualities of a country that will propel us into the future. We also need to democratize. If you look at the situation as this COVID pandemic has shown, we have gained some notoriety in terms of the way we've handled the outbreak here, especially with the way we've treated foreign workers. And if we aspire to be a nation that is going to claim its place in the global community, then we must be able to take care of all the people in this country, citizens and foreigners, and begin to provide people with the security, people with a say in how we want to see our nation, our society go forward, and not continue with this autocratic system where the PAP says one thing and everybody else has to jump to the feet and carry it out. That's not the way to go going forward, and we want to see some changes in this regard.
You can trust the PAP. We've been governing Singapore for more than 60 years. We've never let you down. You can trust the current PAP leadership. For 15 years, I've been PM. I've done my best to serve you. In the last term, you gave us a strong mandate, and we have delivered on that. We've used the mandate to do many things, to improve our preschools, to build more and better HDB flats, to improve our MRT reliability, to phase out streaming in schools, have MGP for seniors, better health care. We have delivered for you. In this crisis, we have delivered for you. We've kept Singaporeans safe. We've kept you in jobs. We've made sure your livelihoods are taken care of. Looking forward, we are going into a more severe crisis, and you need Singapore to have the best team to be looking after your interests and be tackling these problems for you. COVID-19 and the economic downturn are not going away anytime soon. And unless we have good leadership from the PAP, I think we will be in a much weaker position. Fourthly, some people say, why not have more opposition in Parliament? Well, you can vote PAP and still have opposition in Parliament. Because we've changed our constitution. Whatever happens in the elections, there will be at least 12 opposition members in Parliament. Constituency MPs and NC MPs. And they both have equal rights, full rights to vote on everything. Constitutional amendments, money bills, motions of confidence. We want them there. They will make a contribution. But you do not have to vote for them, even though you really prefer a PAP government. Finally, we, the PAP, can offer you security for the future. We're building our team for the long term. I have depth in my team, new members, younger ones, people who are being exposed, groomed, prepared to take over from the older ones in order to provide Singapore good leadership beyond the working life of me and my older colleagues. And we have the plans to take you forward. Plans for transforming Singapore, where there's a Punggol Digital District, where there's a Greater Southern Waterfront. Plans for changing our education system. Plans for improving our healthcare system. Plans for making this the best place to live. And we can deliver on those plans. So vote for the PAP to secure your next few years, to secure your long-term future, so that this is a good place for a long time for you, your children, and your grandchildren.
That's a very good question. Voters should vote for the Workers' Party because we represent a constructive opposition in Parliament. We are here we don't see the PAP as the enemy. What we are looking for is beyond the PAP, beyond the horizon. We want a Singapore where there are good outcomes for Singapore and Singaporeans. We will have to work hard for those outcomes, but we feel that a diversity of voices in Parliament is critical for that to take place. And that's what the candidates of the Workers' Party will do.
Well, I think Singaporeans are now, as I said, more aware of what they want of parliamentarians. There is this question of accountability, question of transparency, and also question of independence of appointments of leaders of our country, especially in the civil service. I stand very strongly by these three fundamental principles. It's not only me, because when I share with people I met and those people who come even to join me, they are very, very determined now to see that the process of government must be correct. And for this process to really be good, you need three fundamentals, three pillars. And these are the three pillars that will then create trust with the people. And then I feel that they will come forward and join my party or any of the political parties who share this very fundamental principle of accountability, transparency, and of course, good appointments in our civil service, and also some of the more important jobs in the country. These are really basics, and we don't want to run away. And the curious young people, when I meet them, always ask me, "Hey, Doc, why is it they never let me know that this particular, like for example, Prime Minister's wife, who appoints the Prime Minister's wife to become, to be in Temasek?" I mean, these were questions they thrown at me. Then I said, then why? What's the criteria for what they call appointing? And why is it every time they hear that her salary is not known, although you can say it's a private company and so on, but it's the people's money. So these are the questions, these are searching questions the young people are asking me, because it's always in the papers. It has always been asked by people of all, even among all the political parties or so. So I think these are very basic, very fundamental. They want to make sure the appointments are not related parties. And I think these are important. So these are the things the curious young Singaporeans want to know.
You know, we've been campaigning on this 4 yes, 1 no. The first yes is to suspend the GST for a year and a half. We collect about $10 billion in GST annually, right? To suspend it just temporarily for a year, I think that's very doable, especially when we've got reserves where analysts estimate it to be around to the tune of about $1 trillion, correct? Our second yes is to this retrenchment benefit scheme, which I just talked about. The third yes is for income for retirees. We have research coming up telling us that retirees require something to the tune of about $1,300 to $400 a month to be able to afford minimal basic conditions. And yet the CPF payout for an average retiree household is about $280. Now you just work out the math and see how insufficient that has become, and we need to provide these elderly some sort of a subsistence kind of income. And as I said, the money will remain in Singapore. Not only will it help them, it will help our businesses as well. The fourth yes that we want to say is for the PAP to put the people first. And as I just mentioned earlier on, for them to make sure that things like that, they just don't capitalize and manipulate the system in their interest at the expense of Singaporeans. One example would be the calling for this election now, as well as the intention to call for one earlier on in the year.